Good morning, everybody, and welcome to your Tuesday morning kickstart. As you guys probably know, Monday was a bank holiday here in Spain, and I think in a lot of parts of Europe too. So if you were away for the weekend, if you had a long weekend, a bank holiday, I hope you enjoyed yourself. And now we are ready to get this week off to a flying start. So first off, bit of news. Congratulations to Erika and Sarah, who both got their exam results back on Monday. And they did an absolutely fantastic job. They passed their exams. They got nice, good scores. Those guys did the not the paper-based exam. Those guys did the computer-based exam. So it only took 1 week to get the results back. So I know we're still waiting on a few students who did the paper-based to get their results back. I think it will be after Christmas by the time Cambridge marks those ones. But yeah, guys, absolutely fantastic job. Well done. And if you haven't already, guys, if you go over to the Telegram group and go to the exam success section, you can give your congratulations to Sarah and Erika yourself, and you can see all their comments as well, their suggestions, their tips, their posts about what kind of topics came up in the exam, which are going to be really, really valuable for you guys. Moving on, this week is a busy one. We have got on Saturday, our Super Saturday event. So this is an intensive day of classes. We've got 3 hours of classes on Saturday, and these are voted on by you. So there is a poll now live in the Telegram group for you guys to vote on what you want to see in these classes. As always, this course is personalized to you. I'm here to help you with the things you actually need help with, not just to make you do exercises for the sake of it, to keep you studying as long as possible. We want to get to the root of problems. So vote in the poll what you want to see, and the activity with the most votes will be done on Saturday. If there's something there that's you want to see that's not an option on the poll, please just comment under the poll with your ideas, your suggestions, things that you need help with. Again, the more specific you are, then the better I can help you. So give me as much information as possible, and I will do my very best to make these sessions on Saturday as useful and valuable as possible for you guys. If you can't join live, do not worry, I will be recording them for you. And our Thursday bonus class this week is study hall. So if you want to go along, meet up with your fellow classmates, help each other out, work together, solve activities together, share ideas, share tips, head along to the Thursday 5:15 study hall event. And today I want to talk a little bit about communication skills, about speaking skills. So I want to break this down, as we do with all the other parts of the exam, or of skills for learning English, or reading, writing, listening, use of English. Speaking can be broken down into different areas as well. So the ones I want to talk about today are vocabulary, grammar, ideas, exam technique, and fluency. Okay, vocabulary, grammar, ideas, exam technique, and fluency. Okay, so all of these things are taken into account when you're speaking. And of course, pronunciation as well. That's one I didn't add. We'll put that one in. Pronunciation. Okay? So I want to kind of remind you guys of the goal of the speaking sessions and how to approach them to make the most out of them, to improve your speaking as quickly as possible, as well as your self-confidence, your level of English, not just your exam scores. Okay, so let's start with vocabulary. Okay, so you've heard me talk about before, we have passive vocabulary and we have active vocabulary. So passive vocabulary is a vocabulary that you've learned, that you might see when you're reading or when you're listening, and you will be able to understand it. But if it's not activated, that means that when you go to speak or write, that your brain, if it's not activated, cannot pull that language from your head. It cannot recall that language yet. Now, when you first learn new words, this is perfectly normal. So to make language passive, you usually have to see it around 8 to 10 times in context, or listening to it, reading in a book. Your Quizlet flashcard sets, you need to see these 8 to 10 times at least before it's passive. And then for us to be able to recall it easily when we're speaking, then it's the same kind of thing. We need to have used that language 8 to 10 times, again, minimum, for it to become activated and natural for us to use. And this is why we have so many speaking sessions a week, to give you that opportunity to activate that language. So it's perfectly normal if, for example, we're on the topic of environment, you're going to your first session of the week. You might have lots of passive vocabulary connected to the environment. You've watched some training videos, you've learned some words, but they might not be active yet, okay? That's your goal for the end of the week of speaking sessions. And once you've used that vocabulary, once you've used the word, we need to reduce our carbon footprint 8 to 10 times during all those speaking sessions, then you will be able to use it more fluently, more easily by the end of the week, and it will be activated. Okay, so this is why I encourage you guys to use Quizlet sets little and often throughout the week, so that you are learning passively new vocabulary and then using it when you're speaking and writing to then activate it. Okay, so to make it so you can use it when you're speaking and writing. We need both of these. We need the passive first. We need the first step and be able to see things when we're reading and listening. But obviously we want to activate it so we can use it when we're speaking and writing. Remember, with vocabulary, depending on the person, is going to vary how many of that 8 to 10 times. It could be 15 times for some people. It could be 4 times for others. But it also depends on how many items of vocabulary you're learning, okay? If you're just trying to learn 2 or 3 new words a week or new expressions, then we're going to have a high success rate in activating that language. If you try and learn 50 new words in a week, you're going to have a very low success rate in learning new vocabulary, okay? The key is little and often, okay, to 8 to 10 times using that vocabulary, so a little bit every day, with a small number of words, okay? Because if you try and do 8 to 10 times 50, my mathematics is bad, but so 50 times 10 is 500. So that would be having to use 500 instances of new words in a week. Not very realistic, okay? But 8 to 10 times with 5 words, 50, much more realistic. We're going to remember those, okay? So that's something that I want you to have in mind when you're learning new vocabulary. You really need to push yourself to use it in those speaking sessions. Don't worry about making mistakes. That's what the speaking sessions are there for. But if you just stay in your comfort zone and don't try and push with that new vocabulary, then we're not going to grow and get better at English as quickly as someone who's really pushing and making an effort to use that new language, okay? So always have a goal for each speaking session with new language. It would be exactly the same thing with grammar. If you're learning a new grammar point, or you know that you find it a bit tricky like with things like conditionals. You're like, okay, I know the rules, but I find it really hard when I have to speak with the rules, no, to do it quickly. Again, this means we have passive knowledge of the grammar point, but it's not necessarily activated. So again, we need to use that regularly. We need to push ourselves to practice it in order to improve. And again, that is going to mean making mistakes. You're not going to get it perfect first time. And that's all right. I don't want you to. I want you to push yourself to try new things. And eventually, after you've done it many, many times, it's going to become normal for you. It's going to become easy. And it's not going to be pushing outside your comfort zone anymore, because it's going to be part of your comfort zone, that new vocabulary, that new grammar. Okay? Then it's not going to feel difficult. It's not going to feel strange. It's not going to use a lot of energy once it becomes normalized. But it does take those repetitions. You need to get those repetitions in to get to that stage. Okay, so we've got our active and passive grammar and vocabulary, and the importance of pushing to use that in the speaking sessions. Third thing that I want you to think about is your ideas. So a lot of people come and they've got great vocabulary, but they might not have thought about these topics before, these weird questions that they ask you in the exam. And you might be thinking, like, I don't know how I would answer that in my own language, let alone in English. And sometimes when we try and answer those questions without having thought about it before, we find that we're giving I'm doing air quotes here, we're giving bad answers. And we think to ourselves, oh my God, my English is terrible. But it's not actually your English is terrible. It's that you've never thought about this before. So you don't have any ideas on this topic. We don't know how to organize them. And so our bad answer is not actually a language issue. It's just we've never thought about this before. Like, imagine if I got asked to do a TED talk, okay, about learning English. Imagine if I got asked to do a TED talk and I didn't prepare for it at all. I just stood up on the stage, having learned the topic of it 2 minutes before, and I was going to give an hour-long presentation. Do you think it would be very good? Probably not. Even less so if it was on a topic that I didn't know much about. I mean, I know a lot about learning English, but imagine if it was on the topic of the state of the British government today. I would have no idea what to talk about, and it would be awful because I wouldn't have practiced. I wouldn't have thought about it. Okay, people who are giving TED Talks have practiced that hundreds and hundreds of times before they're giving their final presentation. And this is what your speaking sessions are. These are your opportunity to, again, get the repetitions in, get the practice in, start thinking of your ideas and formulating your ideas so that by the time you go to the exam, when they ask you a question about the environment or education or technology, you'll have spoken about that question or something very similar hundreds of times before the exam. So it's not going to be like a spontaneous presentation for you. It's going to be something that you have ideas and you've thought about logically before. Okay? So again, I don't want you to get down on yourself. I don't want you to feel bad if you're not sure how to answer a question, if you've never seen it before. The important thing is to go away and reflect on that after the class. So if it's new questions, new topic, you're not sure what your big ideas are on this, you want to go away and have a think about that. Think about how you would answer those questions. What are your opinions on those questions? So that when you come to the class the next day, you're going to be more prepared to answer and give your opinion. Okay? And that's immediately going to help boost your fluency on that topic. Okay? This is why I ask you to read The Guardian on the topics of the speaking sessions. Yes, it gives you practice in your reading skills and with similar texts that would come up in the reading exam, but it's also so that you can get vocabulary on the topic, and it's also so that you can read around the opinions and ideas on these topics, so that, again, that helps you formulate your own opinions, or take opinions from other people. If you agree with them, you're able to share those ideas. Okay, so ideas don't magically appear without being thought about in advance. Okay, nobody can speak spontaneously in an amazing way without having thought about these before. When you guys ask me questions about grammar and things in class, a lot of the time I can give you a really good answer, but it's not because I've spontaneously given you that answer. It's because I've been teaching for nearly 20 years and I've been asked that question many, many times. And the first time I answered that question many years ago, I probably gave an absolutely terrible answer. But then I would go away and research it and think about, okay, how can I make that question, how can I answer that better? And then the next time someone asked me it, it was a better answer, and so on and so on. So I want you to think about that too with speaking, and just as important as vocabulary and grammar is thinking of ideas. Second, connected to that, is organizing those ideas. As we do with your essays. When you're writing an essay, I always tell you to think about TPs, your topic sentence, your point, your explanation, your example. You can formulate your ideas and arguments in a very similar way when you're speaking, okay? You're going to say what you're going to be talking about. You're going to say what your point is, and then you're going to explain that. And perhaps, depending on the time in which part of the exam you're in, you're going to give an example of that to reinforce your ideas, okay? So this is a structure that you can use to help organize yourself when you're speaking with your ideas. One idea at a time. People have a tendency, if they've got loads of things going on in their head, like, oh my God, I've got a million things to say, just trying to say all of them in a big list. So it's kind of like a shopping list. Like, how can the government help solve global warming? Well, first they could do this, and then 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 they could do this. And they could also do this and this, and that. We have a shopping list. Rather than thinking of one idea, well, firstly, or the first thing that comes to mind is that the government could encourage people to recycle. This is my point. Then I'm going to do an explanation. By doing so, this would mean that more plastics are recycled and there would be less single-use plastics being used, which would be more beneficial for the environment. For example, people could use bags for life in supermarkets. So I've given my point, an explanation, and an example in the real world. This is going to be a much stronger answer than a shopping list of every single idea that's in your head, okay? We don't need a million ideas on a topic. We just need one, and to explain it well, okay? And this stops with the overwhelm as well of like, oh my God, I don't have anything to say on the topic. You just need one thing to say on the topic and explain it, okay? So, vocabulary, grammar, ideas. Next on my hit list, is exam technique. Okay? So, exam technique is obviously, if you're doing the Cambridge Advanced exam, you need to learn how to play the game. You need to know how it works to be able to show off in the exam. Okay? So, first thing you have to do is watch the training videos on how the exam works. On the platform, in the speaking section, you need to make sure you watch those so you have a good idea of how the exam works. Next, we need to put that into practice. You need to use the templates. You need to get a good idea of how to play the game for the exam. This, again, takes repetitions. Now, remember, for your brain, depending on what thing you're focusing on, it's going to use different brain energy. Okay, So when anything is new, be it you're trying new grammar or new vocabulary or new ideas or a new exam technique, when you're pushing outside your comfort zone with that thing, you're using all your brain energy to focus on that one thing. So it's very normal if we're focusing all our energy on that thing, then other areas are not receiving as much focus and may drop in quality. So for example, when you're first learning the technique for the exam and you're focusing all your attention and energy on that, you may find that your fluency and your vocabulary drops. And that's perfectly normal and natural and kind of what should happen. But then once that technique becomes part of your comfort zone again, it uses less brain energy, you will have more room in your brain to work and focus on the other things as well. Okay? Same for everything. If you're pushing with new vocabulary and you're using all your brain energy to think about that, then don't be surprised if your exam technique drops or something because of that. Okay? So when you're pushing, other things can drop while you're learning something new. That's very, very normal. Okay? So please, don't be worried if you're just starting and you're just learning with that new exam technique. If you're like, oh my God, I'm getting worse, not better. It's totally normal. Just think about that brain energy and where you're putting your focus. Okay? So all of those things contribute to your fluency. Okay? Now, your fluency is your ability to speak without much hesitation. Okay, so we need to work on all those skills of vocabulary, grammar, your ideas, and your exam tasks. We need to work on those individually in order to bring up our fluency levels. Okay, but once you have those things, once you have the exam technique, you have that in your comfort zone again, then your fluency is going to improve. Once you have ideas on all the core topics, once you have those kind of you're more confident in what you want to be saying, then your fluency is going to improve. Once you have key vocabulary on the core topics on the exam, your fluency will improve. Once you're able to use with ease the kind of key grammar that you might need in the speaking exam, like speculation, language, conditionals, again, your fluency improves, because your fluency is going to improve when things are easy for you. Okay? People who say they're not fluent, this is just because we haven't had enough repetitions in with the language that they want to use or the topic they want to talk about. Every single person in this in this course can talk quite easily about the question, hello, how are you? I'm fine, thanks, how are you? Everybody can say that fluently because they've done it hundreds and hundreds of times. They've got the repetitions in. They don't even need to think about it. It just comes naturally, okay? So we want that to happen with the other parts of the speaking exam as well, okay? So how are we going to do this with the speaking sessions? Okay? Going to as many as you can, little and often throughout the week, so that we're getting the repetitions in with our vocabulary, grammar, your ideas, and your exam technique, which is going to ultimately build up our fluency. Number 2, very, very important, and often people skip this step, is that after each session, you're spending 5 or 10 minutes just going over the session and thinking about, okay, how could I make that a little bit better? What do I need to improve on? Was there a question that I didn't have any ideas for, so it was difficult for me to answer? Was there some vocabulary that I was missing? Did Cheryl or did Mary or did Matthew give me a bit of advice that I need to put into practice? The more you can do that little analysis stage afterwards, then the easier it's going to be for you in the next class, because you can come back and be like, okay, I've worked on that thing. I've thought of the idea and how to improve it and make it better. And now I'm going to come back to the next class and practice it again. and make that better. If you only come to one speaking session a week, it's going to be very hard for you to activate language and improve. You will still improve, but it will be at a much slower pace than someone who's coming maybe 3 or 4 times a week to speaking sessions, because they will have had those several opportunities to think about their errors, analyze them, push, make things better, get the repetitions in and practice. Okay, so as much as you can, try and join the speaking sessions to do that. And if you can't join 1 week, that's totally fine. Or if you can only join 1 or 2 sessions a week, that's totally fine. But maybe try and find a study buddy that you can meet up with on another day or at the weekend, again, to get those extra repetitions in, to get that extra practice in. If speaking or vocabulary is something that you know is a weakness for you and you need to work on. If speaking is already one of your strengths and you know that you need to work on writing or reading or something else, then prioritize that first. But if you know that speaking is something that we need to work on, then I would suggest following these tips to help you improve in that. Okay? So I hope that helps. I hope you find that useful. And as always, if you have any questions or you'd like to talk about this further, feel free to head over to the Telegram group. Guys, have a great week and I'll speak to you soon.